Coming up today, it's episode 108 of In the Front Row with Mike Mero. We sit down with former professional wrestler Marc Mero. Mero shares his journeys, which started in New York. He was attracted to contact sports, hockey, lacrosse, football, and boxing, where he is a four-time state champion. At age 30, he turned to professional wrestling and had a great career with the WWF, also WCW. He shares his tales in the ring and tells us about what it's like in the ring, especially going up against Ric Flair in his early days in wrestling. Now a motivational speaker, he talks to high school kids and youth about drug addiction and bullying, and he currently has a new book out, Bad to Good, in stores now, that chronicles his time in wrestling, drug addiction, and what he's doing now as a speaker. All that in this episode, a great one, a motivational one as well. It's episode 108 of In the Front Row with Mike Mero featuring Marc Mero. Marc, again, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. I know you're busy with your book tour, the book that's out now, Bad to Good, that we're going to talk about some of the stories I'm sure that are in there that people can enjoy about your journey to, the pro wrestling, but so many things before that as well. That's where I want to start, the beginning for you. You're a guy that was born in Buffalo, but you moved to Liverpool just outside of the Syracuse area. And it seemed like growing up for you, you loved the contact sports. It was hockey. It was football. It was boxing. What attracted you to the contact sports out there?
Well, when I grew up, I went to high school in Liverpool. We lived in Buffalo, and we lived in a really rough neighborhood. The west side of Buffalo, New York, was a really tough neighborhood back then, and I'm sure it is still to this day. But there was a lot of gangs and stuff, and man, you had to really learn how to take care of yourself early in life, and that gave me that passion for contact sports. The first sport I played was hockey, and then got into lacrosse, football, boxing, and then, of course, ended my career as a professional wrestler.
With professional wrestling, did you go back to your days at Buffalo, kind of to mimic anything that you saw on the streets and some other guys maybe that you got in some tussles with in Buffalo?
Well, I mean, obviously I was very young then, but it was more about, when you go through being bullied or picked on as a kid, and a lot of that stays with people, and they don't always realize that. And sometimes you have a lot of built up animosity, anger, bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness. And you live your life in a different realm than maybe other people that were never or never went through what I went through as a kid. And it was really tough. My mom we were so poor. My mother worked two jobs trying to take care of us kids, and she bought most of our clothes like at garage sales. And it would be so embarrassing to go to school with, second, third hand clothes. And, you never had the cool sneakers. And, back then it was like Converse All-Stars. You keep wearing Converse All-Stars, man, you were in. And of course we couldn't afford that. But so I was picked out a lot as a kid. But, I tell you, what's amazing is that because of what I went through, and because now this is my 18th year speaking at schools, churches, corporations all over the world, I really understand when I meet someone that has gone through something very similar to me. I look them in the eyes and let them know your current trial is going to be your future testimony. You're going to get through this because it's through our struggles that we find our strength. And I know, man, this is what's been so cool is I've been able to help so many people throughout my life now, these last 18 years, and just been the greatest journey I could ever imagine being on.
What kind of influence was your mom? As you said, she, divorced, your mom and dad divorced. She was working several jobs. Certainly that kind of work ethic kind of spread to you. What kind of, what would you get from her?
Well, back then, if you wanted to have any money at all, you in Buffalo, New York, you'd shovel people's driveways, or we had this hand-me-down lawnmower. It was the kind that you push, the blade spins as you push it. So it wasn't but it was something to make us a few extra bucks here and there. And we had that work ethic very young growing up. But also when, as you get older, you realize, like, I never knew the depression my mom went through or the broken heart she had from my dad divorcing her. I never understood that until later on in life. And that sometimes we don't always know what our parents are going through. And the thing is, our parents, they're people too. And they go through hard times. They go through struggles that as kids, we don't always see that because we're sent to our own little world. But man, when I realized the sacrifice that my mom made for us kids was absolutely Incredible. And when I was younger, I always wanted to, obviously I wanted to buy her a house. We were so poor. We lived in this horrible apartment building. And I often show the picture of the apartment that I grew up in my presentations. And I always dreamed of someday getting my mom a house, which eventually happened when I signed a big contract and got a signing bonus. I used that signing bonus money to buy my mom a house. And it was just incredible.
Before pro wrestling, looked like maybe you were going to be a pro boxer. You had 4 state titles as a boxer as well. Did you think that was going to be, where you were going to go?
Well, after winning the New York State Golden Gloves a couple of years in a row, a gold medal in the Empire State Games, and then becoming a member of the USA boxing team where I moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I trained at the U.S. Olympic Training Center. And while I was in the U.S. boxing team, I was thinking, I realized at that point, I'm one of the best fighters in the whole country. And the Olympics were boycotted in 1980, and I was there in 1981. So it was either having to wait 3 years and hopefully, you'll still be able to be on the team, or turning pro when I'm the hottest prospect out there after just winning the New York State Golden Gloves, which is one of the toughest states to win in the country. And after winning that, we were working on a 5-fight contract with ESPN. I was this young up-and-coming fighter knocking everybody out. And unfortunately, 2 weeks before my first professional boxing match, I had my nose shattered in an accident, and I needed reconstructive surgery. And it was in that time off. See, my whole life, all I've been doing is training. Football, hockey, boxing. There was never an off season for me. I was training. When I was off, I was lifting weights or getting in shape or running or doing whatever. And this was the first time in my life I remember, man, let me just go have fun for a little while. I'm always working hard. Let me just go party. Let me chase the girls. Let me enjoy life, And it was in that time I got hooked on drugs. And next thing I know, 10 years of my life go by, drug addiction. And then I got to get a job, and I'm working for a pool company, digging swimming pools. You get the big backhoe comes in, and you got to go in and shape it with a shovel. And just such hard work in the hot Florida sun. I remember being in that bottom of that pool just thinking, man, how did I get here? How did I throw away 10 years of my life? And then the amazing thing that happened was I was with a bunch of friends over my apartment, and we were partying, watching TV. One of my buddies had the remote control for the television, and he's like flipping through the TV channels, and all of a sudden he lands on professional wrestling. I go, whoa, 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 stop it there. Let me see this. As I'm looking at the television, I get this overwhelming feeling. Some people call it the aha moment. I go, hey, guys, I can do that. My buddies busted out laughing. They go, Mark, are you crazy? Look at the size of those guys. They're going to pick you over their head and throw you right to that ring. I said, no, I can do that. My other buddy goes, Mark, you're 30 years old. What are you going to do? Start a pro career now? And man, I just said those 2 words. I use it in every presentation. I believe. You have no idea the power you give yourself when you believe in you. Because man, Mike, there's a lot of negative people out there. There's a lot of people, and unfortunately, they're friends and even family members who are going to tell you why you can't do something. You'll never make it. You'll never be an influencer. You'll never make the pros. You can't sing that well. You'll never graduate from school. You'll never go to college. The reason why people tell you that you can't do it is because they can't do it. And man, so now it's about the action we take towards dreams and goals. And when I do corporate events, I really should. It's about not becoming complacent in life. Mike, I'll tell you, I'll never retire. I'll just refire. And that's my goal in life, man. Always reinventing yourself. And I just think that, sometimes people say those were the days. Or Mike, I'm telling you, days after days, man. We learn from past mistakes. We grow in grace and knowledge. And we have to realize that the rest of our life will be the best of our life. We don't want to say that our best days have passed us by saying those were the days. No. These are the days, and every day I want to be better than I was the day before.
Well, again, I could tell already why you're great at motivational speaking here. But so it's one thing to say, yeah, I could do that. But like you said, 30 years old, how hard was it to do that, to learn those skills and to get your body ready for professional wrestling?
Well, that's a great question because, it's about the action we take towards dreams and goals. And the action I had to take, obviously, I had to find out where there was a wrestling school. I didn't know how to wrestle. I was working at this gym back then in Venice, Florida called The Waiting Room. And I met a couple of the guys that were on television that were the guys that kind of got beat up on television. They get paid $150 and they got their brains kicked in from these pro wrestlers, And all I said was, how do you get to do that? They said, well, you got to go to wrestling school. And I found out there was a wrestling school. Boris Malenko, who was Joe and Dean Malenko's father, had a wrestling school in Tampa, Florida. It's about maybe 60 miles from where I lived. I would drive there after work on weekends. And I got off all the drugs, man. I completely cleaned my life up. And so then I asked those guys that would drive 9 hours from Venice, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, to be hopefully picked to be on television to get beat up by one of the superstars. I thought, hey, man, if I get my foot in the door, beat me up, okay? And of course, when I went there, they did choose me. I had a good body, I tan, really looking the part. So they chose me. And after the match, Dusty Rhodes called me into his makeshift office at Center Stage in Atlanta. And he said to me, hey, kid, anybody ever tell you look like Little Richard? And I'm thinking, I thought he was talking about a wrestler. So I said, I never heard of Little Richard. He goes, you don't know Little Richard? Wah-ba-ba-doo-ba-ba-wah-ba-boo. I go, oh, the singer? I go, no, I never heard. He goes, oh, I think I got a gimmick for you. And my life changed, Mike. I got to tell you, man, everything that I wrote down as a little kid, all my dreams and goals became a reality because of one man saying, you look like this or that, you know? And so now, of course, I have to become this Little Richard. Now, Dusty Rhodes put me, they had makeup and hair. A girl that came to that, it was actually Terry Reynolds, which was Dustin Reynolds' wife. She did all the hair and makeup for everybody. Well, she did all my makeup and hair and everything. She spins me around the chair. I look in the mirror and go, oh my gosh, I do look like Little Richard. And that's something Dusty saw that nobody else ever saw in my life, And the character took off and it was so much fun. But, some of my greatest memories were the times that, like, Dusty would have me come to the arena early because he wanted to work with me on the character. He had this vision of what this character was. You know how flamboyant Dusty Rhodes was, Yeah. And so he would say, now I want you to walk and talk like this. And I got to tell you, we had some of the most fun ever just laughing at the way Dusty would do it, that he'd tell me to do it. And of course, it was weird for me to first come out there and go, I'm so pretty, I should have been born a little girl. Or I'll kick your booty with my tutti frutti. And so Dusty, then when I get it down, he'd go, oh, I love it. And we'd hug and get laughing, So those are memories. I mean, I got to spend so much quality time with my mentor, the American Dream.
You became, Johnny B. Bad, and walking that line from being flamboyant to being a tough guy as well. Was that a challenge for you to kind of, again, learn that character and become that character?
I think it was more a challenge for people that really knew me, like my father. Okay. My dad would work my corner in my boxing matches. So my dad traveled all over the country with me when I was a boxer and, be in my corner, working my corner. And, he's got this tough son, So my dad was a detective. And so a lot of his friends were police officers. So I think my first one was Clash of Champions. So my dad has all his friends come over to his house to watch my debut. Because they saw me knocking people out in the Golden Gloves, So they loved me as an athlete, But they had no idea what they were in store for, And I come walking out with this purple boa on, my makeup's all done, lipstick on, and I had to walk to the camera and say those words that I said earlier. I'm so pretty, I should have been born a little girl. And my dad told me this later on. He goes, Mark, my dad was from Brooklyn. So he said, Mark, the room was silent. And all I said was, hey, at least he's making good money.
The things you do for pro wrestling, right? But
oh my gosh!
Obviously, it worked out. You're, with WCW 91 to 96. Do you remember your first couple times in the ring and what it was like, and maybe those moments where you didn't hit your mark or didn't do something the right way, and you felt it?
I got to tell you, man, it was like being thrown to the wolves because, man, I only had a couple matches in my life. Independent matches where learning how to wrestle and then being at Boris Malenko's school. I was so green. So they would put me in with some of the greatest superstars like Arn Anderson, Ricky Morton, Brad Armstrong, Steve Regal, guys that really knew how to work. Because they wanted to teach me on the road when we're doing all these cities. We're doing 200-something cities a year. As we're traveling, I'm learning as I'm going. But man, there was, and then, one of my first pay-per-views, I'm wrestling Sting, like the icon Sting. I was so nervous thinking I'm wrestling this everyone knows Sting. And oh my gosh, it was like, I missed my mark on a lot of things. And they were so patient with me though. And I really, so many guys were just really patient. They seen the work ethic I had because, my first year I won Pro Wrestling Illustrated Rookie of the Year. And I think it was my second or third year, I was voted most improved wrestler. So I would go down to the power plant for WCW, and Diamond Dallas Page was one of my closest friends. We'd work together, working on matches, moves, and just storytelling, on how to put together a 5 or 10 minute match.
Yeah, I was going to say, who comes up with the storylines typically before a match like that?
Well, they have writers for WCW, WWE. There's writers that actually write out the storylines, and you're not always privy to what is going to happen or who's going to win a belt or anything till maybe sometimes to the day you get to the arena, and they go, by the way, you're going to be winning the world television title tonight. And it's like, oh my gosh, So it was really cool. But telling the story in the match, whether you win or lose, you can put together, things that we would try to do, throw you off double, tackle, drop down, hip toss, arm drag. We'd be calling it in the ring and learn how to communicate with each other.
So the whole thing isn't orchestrated, but there's always a counter move to what's out there. Is that kind of how it works as well?
Yes, absolutely, man. You want to make it look as fluent as possible. It's the dance. You got to have a good dance partner, You don't want someone that is going to punch you as hard as you can in the face and say, oh, I'm so sorry. You got to really work at that thing. And that was hard for me to learn how to throw what they call a working punch as opposed to a real punch, because I'm coming from the boxing world. And in wrestling, you see the guys wind up with these big haymakers. But boxing, you throw short, crisp punches, 1-2 hook, or something like that. So it was much different when I was first learning how to let your arm loose and just let it go and barely touch the guy.
In boxing, you're not hitting the mat like you are in wrestling numerous times. How much give is in that floor?
It's so funny that you say that, because I think people think, oh, there's big springs under there and you don't really get hurt. I've had 14 surgeries in my 14-year career, okay? Total reconstruction of my knee, 5 elbow surgeries, 5 shoulder surgeries. I've had so much, that to repair my body from falling on that easy ring, But I got to tell you a funny story was that Boris Malenko, when I first was training, we got in the ring, a bunch of the newbies got in the ring, and he'd just have you cross your hands and fall backwards. And it was like, okay, I'm going to land on my back. It's kind of a weird feeling to land on your back, And when I hit the mat, I swear I sounded like a seal from SeaWorld. I was like, I couldn't catch my breath. And every time I would make that noise like a seal, like, it was I've been looking back now, it's hilarious. By the time, am I going to die? And then I thought to myself, how the heck do these guys do this night after night? I can't, and not only that, coming off the top rope and landing on your back or something, like getting, thrown off the rope on the floor or something. I'm thinking, how do these guys do this? But you eventually learn how to land properly and not stiffen up, because that's even worse when you tighten up your body and then land.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were watching some of your fight with Eddie Guerrero in 1995, and it's just amazing how, again, you guys are so orchestrated to not hurt each other, because you're talking about hurt yourself. Probably very easy to hurt your opponent as well in cases like that.
Yeah, you really want to take care of each other, because you don't want to be known as the guy that hurts other people. No one wants to really work with you, And, and I didn't want to have that reputation. That's why I worked so hard to be a better wrestler and not hurt people. And then, doing things off the top rope, where I'm doing they call it the wild thing. I called it the wild thing, but it's the shooting star press, where you got to land on the guy, chest to chest, doing a flip in midair without hurting the guy. So you have to take it on your hands and knees so you're not hurting the person.
Yeah, it's amazing, again, to look back at some of those, those matches and to see that. And again, for you, WCW, such great success there. And then you went on to WWF, eventually became WWE, and you became yourself. You got rid of the Johnny B. Good, or Johnny B. Bad, excuse me. Why take on your own name at that point when you make that transition?
Well, this is really where I got in depth in my book, was when Vince McMahon wanted me so badly to come to the WWF. And, he was thinking, he was going to get something of the Johnny B. Bad character because it was so popular. And he thought in New York, this thing's going to take off. Well, because the lawsuits started flying back and forth with different wrestlers, they said, we're not going to go there. So they had to come up with something different. So they had their creative team come up with this character, and it was called Wildman Marc Mero. So when Vince flew me up to meet with creative and sign my contract, I'm in the room, and he said to me, he goes, let me run this by you. What do you think of Wildman Marc Mero? And I thought, and I'm thinking to myself, this is creative. I mean, they made The Undertaker. They made such big stars, I'm thinking they must know something I don't know. So, but I said to him, I go, Vince, what's a wild man? He goes, well, can you do a Tarzan yell? I go, wow, I don't have a very strong voice. In fact, when I yell, it scratches. It's like I would never be able to do that. So I said, I don't really have a strong voice. He goes, I go, Vince, am I from the jungle? Like, I didn't get it, And sometimes when you don't relate to something, like Johnny B. Bad was so opposite of me. It was like just playing this fun character, Now I'm playing my real name, but I'm from the jungle? It didn't really make sense to me. But hey, they know something I don't know. Well, apparently they didn't. And it did not. When you don't resonate with it, the fans don't resonate with it. Not only that, now my ex-wife is on the road with me too. And, they see this beautiful woman in the ring. They don't pay attention to me no matter what crazy moves I'm doing out there. They're looking at this beautiful bombshell and saying, woo, So it was just very difficult at the beginning. But, eventually turning it around a little bit where they ended up putting the Intercontinental belt on me, where I beat Owen Hart. And it was a tournament. So I beat Owen Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Ron Simmons to win the belt, which was an honor, and I thought maybe we're going to turn the corner on this, And then I blow out my knee. I need total reconstruction surgery, meniscus, medial collateral, ACL. I had it all redone, and I'm out for 8 months. And during that time, they decided to repackage me as come back as this marvelous Marc Mero, kind of play on my former boxing thing. But now I'm a bad guy and being rude to the girl that everyone loves, which was fine with me because, we're both making buku money at the time, So and that was really fun to do, is playing the bad guy as marvelous Marc Mero.
And you mentioned Vince McMahon negotiating a contract with him. What was that like for you? I think I had seen you were the first one to have a guaranteed contract with him.
Yeah, well, 3 years before that, when my contract was up with WCW, Vince flew me to New York, and I had dinner with him and his family. And after dinner, we just sat together, and he said to me, he goes, Mark, what's it going to take for you to come to the WWF? I said, well, Vince, I got to have a guaranteed contract. He goes, we don't give guaranteed contracts. We give opportunities. I think you're going to make more money than you've ever made in your life. And I thought, you know what? I got a guaranteed contract, a big guaranteed contract that Eric Bischoff just negotiated for me with the signing bonus, and they paid for all my costumes back in WCW. So I said to him, Vince, if I don't have a guaranteed contract, I can't do it. And he reached his hand out. We shook hands. He goes, I'll never forget this. He goes, someday we're going to do business together. So fast forward now 3 more years, my contract is up again. And Vince flies me up, and he goes, well, no, I'm sorry, he didn't fly me up. We talked on the phone. And he said, all right, so 3 years went by. He goes, what's it going to take to bring you to WWF? I go, Vince, I told you before, there's only one way I'll come, is if I get a guaranteed contract. And he goes, it was quiet for a minute. He goes, done. And I said, and there's a couple other things I need. And he goes, well, what is that? I go, I want a pretty big signing bonus, and I got a huge signing bonus, and he agreed to that. And then he said, what else? And I go, and this is where it really got funny. I go, I would like my wife to fly everywhere I fly. And he goes, what? He goes, I never heard that one before. And I go, and you know what, Vince, since she's going to fly everywhere I fly, why don't you make her my valet? And he goes, no, let's just worry about you. He goes, okay, so guaranteed contract, signing bonus, and your wife goes everywhere you go. And I go, yes. So he sends me a ticket to come to Stanford, the meeting I just told you about, the creative meeting, but it was only one ticket. So I had his cell phone number, so I call him up on his phone. I go, hey, Vince, there's only one ticket here. He goes, well, how many tickets you need? I go, my wife flies everywhere I fly. He goes, to sign a contract? I go, yes. And so he goes, all right. So he sends me another ticket. And my wife, Rena, at the time, fly to Stanford, to New York. They pick us up. They take us over to Stanford. And we walk into Vince's office. And I'll never forget, he looks up, he goes, I got to put her on TV. It's just like that. And so that day we picked out the name Sable. And the rest is history, man. That's when we went over to creative and chatting at the room with the creative team and came up with Wildman, Marc Mero, and Sable. And they had all the drawings made. It was really cool.
So you did him a favor by bringing your wife along and creating this character as well. Were you also a trendsetter? What did you see from that point on? Were more wrestlers with Vince McMahon getting those guaranteed contracts?
Well, at first, I was the first one to break the glass ceiling. Now, remember, Steve Austin and Mick Foley just signed maybe a couple months before me, and they signed for the opportunity. They never got a guaranteed contract. I mean, of course, later on they did.
Sure.
So there was a lot of animosity towards me, which I didn't really understand at the time. Looking back now, I completely understand. I mean, Mick Foley wrote about it in his book, and a lot of guys didn't think I deserved that guaranteed contract, and I get that. I have no animosity or no bitterness towards anybody, but I can understand why they would feel that way. But a lot of guys didn't want to work with me, and it was just, and not only that, when I was with WCW, you had the camaraderie of the guys. You're traveling with the guys. You're in the car to the next city. You're working out. You're having drinks or whatever. You're just always with the guys. Now, I'm only with my wife. And so I didn't build that camaraderie, meeting all these new guys that were at WWF at the time. And I can understand where they wouldn't have, been close to me or liked me or whatever. So, but realizing that that's what I wanted in my life and wanted to make sure I kept my marriage strong. So I took my wife with me.
Yeah. Looking back at it and looking at those performances, maybe during that time, did you see did that affect the performance as opposed to what it was WCW when you were traveling around with the boys?
Well, absolutely, man. I mean, there were some guys who were so professional. Like when I wrestled Steve Austin, King of the Ring, when he came up with Austin 316, we had a great match. And there were some guys that were just very professional and put a lot of other stuff, to the side and didn't let it bother. But there were some guys, and I don't want to name names because I don't want to bury anybody, but there was guys like if someone threw you off and you hit them with a shoulder tackle, they would pretend they fell like a big tree, just real slow, instead of taking a quick, crisp backdrop or some, back bump. And it was just frustrating because I could tell they didn't want to work with me, or they would dead weight me. Like one of my finishing moves was a TKO where you pick the guy up by your shoulder and spin him into it like kind of a diamond cutter. And there were some guys that just dead weighted me, meaning that they didn't want to go. When you're trying to pick up a 250, 300-pound guy and they don't want to get you to pick him up, you're not going to pick him up, okay? Or you're going to kill yourself trying anyways.
Yeah, that had to be a like, moment for you to see that happen. What do you do in that case? How do you adjust mid-match like that?
The frustration with me started boiling over because it would get me so mad trying to pick up someone that didn't want to get picked up. When they know that the finishing move is going to be that, and they just want to make you look bad, and then make you look bad on television. And then, the way it looks is like you're not strong enough to pick the guy up, as opposed to just throwing a guy up on your shoulder and spinning him, One guy that was phenomenal at it was Rikishi. He was, but back then they would call him the Sultan, where, he's like over 300 pounds, 400-pound guy, he's huge. I throw him off the ropes to get the momentum and pick him up right up on my shoulder. He would go so easy. He was like a feather, spin him into the I call it TKO, spin him into that, pin him 1, 2, 3. But what a joy it was to work with a guy like that. No animosity, no bitterness. I'm here to do business. And I'm always thankful. Whenever I see like at a wrestling convention, I always give him a big hug, man. He's a great guy.
Eventually left WWF, a couple of stops from 2000, 2005 before you retired. What do you remember about those times, before your retirement, before you decided to step away from the ring?
Went through a lot when I left professional wrestling because I had 3 years left on my guaranteed contract at WWF. I just signed a brand new contract. So, and then my ex-wife, she was feeling like the sexual harassment was too much at the time, and she ended up suing him. So I had to walk away also with her. We went and rented a place in Hollywood, and she tried to get into acting and do her thing. And she got a couple of small parts, but nothing really took off. Remember, she couldn't use the name Sable, so she's going as Marc Mero, which is it's a big difference, when you can't use a stage name that everybody knows you as, knows you from. So, and then she wanted to go back to wrestling. And of course, I had no desire to go back to wrestling at that time. And she went back, and the rest is history. She met her future husband, Brock Lesnar, and they have a couple of kids. And so I moved on in my life, but it was a real roller coaster after that. Went through some really dark times and got into the drugs, depression. And then one day, man, it all turned around in the blink of an eye. It changed, and I become this inspirational speaker, and my whole life turned around. And I think that's when you realize that you have no bitterness, resentment, anger, or unforgiveness. You live such an incredible life. And people often ask me, if I ever saw my ex-wife, there's only 2 words I really want to say to her: thank you. I'm so happy for her and her family and her kids and what she's doing in her life, as long as she's happy, But people often ask me, how do you get over that? How do you go through this and stuff? And I said, well, for me, it's easy. How do you know when you're really forgiven somebody? And I say, when somebody mentions her name, I don't get angry anymore. That's when you really know that your life has changed, because I don't want to live with resentment or bitterness.
Well, how'd you turn it around? You mentioned, pro wrestling. It sounds like it kind of saved you the first time from your addictions. You get back into the addictions. How'd you turn it around the second time?
Well, it came down to Christmas Day. I had no place to go. I lost so many family members. My little brother and sister died at 21. My mom died at 58. My dad died while I was holding my arms from lung cancer. Losing so many friends in the wrestling industry that I wrestled against and they actually traveled with when I was with WCW. It was just a really depressing time. And of course, your wife leaves you for another guy. And next thing I realized, it's Christmas Day, and I got no place to go. I got nothing to do in my drug addiction. I didn't want to be around people. So I remember I drove to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and sat under a pier on Christmas Day and just watched the waves roll in, roll out. And that's when I decided to end it all. And if it wasn't for my faith in God, and I write about it in my book, so I don't want to give it all away, but if it wasn't for my faith and how it turned around, I got on my knees and just asked God for forgiveness and to somehow change my life, and next thing you know, doors started opening everywhere. It's like people were assigned to my life that I had to meet for my life to take off, and at first I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I went through my money like crazy, just bad choices, decisions, all the stupid things I did. Of course, a divorce, you lose half of it anyway, but I remember I had to get a job at Gold's Gym as a personal trainer. And I remember it was like really humbling because people would walk in, they go, "Oh my gosh, Marc Mero, what are you doing here?" I say, "Well, I work here." They go, "You work at Gold's Gym?" So it was very humbling. But it was another part of my life that I really learned the joy of changing someone's life by, like they used to have this wall of fame at Gold's Gym that showed all the people that lost weight or gained muscle or like the top 10 and all these pictures of people. And next thing you know, I wanted my clients to be on that wall, And so we do before pictures, and then of course they train with me, and next thing you know, they're getting these amazing results. Because it wasn't that I was such a great trainer; I was a great motivator. Like people didn't want to. It's almost like people didn't want to let me down by going out and cheating on their diet or not working out hard or drinking or whatever it would, drugs or whatever it would be. And it was a joy to help people. And then I opened up my own gym and decided to take like 4 trainers with me to my new gym. And then that took off. But I got a call from Melbourne High School football coach. It was August of 2007. I'll never forget it. And he says, "Hey, Mark, can you come and speak to our players?" I'm thinking, "Oh, that'd be cool." He said, "Yeah, I don't want the kids getting steroids or drugs or, you know what I mean? I wanted to live good lives, So I thought, okay. So I put together a little speech in my head that I would come and talk to the kids, not like the presentation I do now, where it's multimedia. As I'm talking, things are flashing behind me, videos and pictures and music, and it's really well done. So I went and spoke to the players. And of course, I got a bunch of messages through, back then Facebook was real big with kids. And I got a lot of messages through Facebook on how the talk really inspired the football players, Well, unbeknownst to me, that football coach calls another football coach at another school and said, "Hey, this guy came over to our school and did a great job." And he goes, "Well, I'm coming to speak to the whole school." And it took off, and that was 18 years ago. And I averaged 230 events a year. It's just like being back in wrestling. I remember when I had my last match with WWF, it was the Capital Carnage in Manchester, England, and we had to fly home. And I'm thinking, we decided we're done. We're never coming back. No more travel. I already saw the world. I was fine. And then I get into inspirational speaking, and I'm back all over the world again. I've been to, believe it or not, I've been to Guatemala, been to Russia, and spoke at schools in Russia, which was incredible. Traveling over to the UK or traveling all around Canada. And it's been a joy. I love what I do because it's crazy to see young people who are so inspired that you get a standing ovation from middle or high school kids that love the presentation. They all want to meet you or follow you on social media or whatever. And it's just incredible.
I was going to say, the ovation that you got from wrestling from fans and now what you're getting from these students, do they compare? Is one better than the other?
Well, Mike, I often say that I still get to entertain people, but nobody's hit me over the head with a chair anymore. So the longevity is great.
Yeah, that's always a plus. It's always a plus. It's easier on your body, right?
Yes. And I don't have the surgeries anymore, okay?
Do you feel like that it's become your calling? Like you said, you're under the bridge, you're about to end it all, and now you have this whole different life than you once had.
God is so real. And I never beat people over the head with a Bible or try to convert people, whatever the people say, or think. I just know how it really is in my life. And if people could see the love and joy of Christ shine through me, what a blessing that is. Because I could talk about him all day long, how he changed my life, how he turned it around for where I shouldn't even be here until being one of the top speakers in the whole country and enjoying every moment of it. Found my calling, found my purpose is what I really should say, is that this is my purpose in life, is there's no greater joy than helping another person.
The book out now, Bad to Good, Inspiring Story of a Wrestling Wildman, as you see it there on your website. Again, how much is that book inspired by what you're doing now?
Obviously, I've always wanted to write my autobiography, but never realized, how much that this would inspire my life, the change in my life. And I think when people read it, well, the people that have read it, it's only been out for about three weeks or so, but all the reviews are coming in have been so positive, man, and how it's just really inspirational. How so many people say they picked it up, they couldn't even put it down. I mean, it's not a thin book. As you can see, this is almost 400 pages of my life story, and but it's overcoming adversity, and I think anyone that reads it that maybe lost a loved one, suffered a divorce, a broken heart, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. It's all in here, man. And it's like overcoming these things that people are going to go, oh my gosh, I went through that. And then seeing me go through it and obviously overcome it. And I don't want to just take the credit myself. I got to say, man, it's faith and God. It's what changed my whole life.
And it seems like the book, I mean, there may be a basis of wrestling in there, but you don't need to be a wrestling fan to get this book. It sounds like it goes beyond your professional wrestling career, obviously.
Like it's kind of funny that we got great. The publishers are great. Ben Beal, who's my co-author, he's just. We spent so many hours on Zoom because he lives in England. So we had to set up a time. We do an hour like every other day or something, and he would have to re-listen to me over and over to the story. Well, when we first gave it to the publishers, they were like, "You got to talk more about wrestling," and because we went so much into the inspirational side and stuff, and I got it. We were like, "Yeah," so we redid it and put a lot of the stories that you read in there about the wrestling and things I went through and how I got into the business and all the, I don't know, kind of funny stories too. Unfortunately, Arn Anderson had one of the tasks of having to teach me how to wrestle. And he's one of the funniest guys. And I remember saying, he just goes, "Oh my gosh, this guy doesn't know the difference between a wrist lock and a wristwatch." So he was just hilarious. But man, we had some good ones. Once I learned how to wrestle, I really, really enjoyed it. And coming from nothing to making something in my life, and now just living just a victorious life.
Did putting this book together, did it help rekindle some of those memories and let you look at the time in wrestling and even before that in boxing and other sports very favorable, and remember those times in a good way?
Absolutely. And reliving some of the memories of like winning the New York State Golden Gloves, and being the underdog, and the guy that was going to the finals against me had all knockouts also. So that the paper thought this guy's going to knock me out. They picked him to beat me very easily. And I knocked him out in 23 seconds of the first round. So it was like a memory that I'll never forget. But also like living the memories that you have to talk about, because you can't talk about the good without having the bad. So I had to relive a lot of moments that I'm not proud of, or things I went through, and a lot of people don't realize that I was dealing drugs with the Colombian cartel. And living this incredible different life that nobody would ever even expect of me, that I never talked about. But I thought, what? This book, I'm going to open up and just tell people this is me, man, and don't judge me from my past because I don't live there anymore.
Yeah, certainly made it through there. And again, making a great difference. You've got some great trophies behind you, a couple of belts as well. Is there one thing behind you that you're more proud of than others?
Well, I think, I have the Intercontinental title and the World Television title behind me. And I think the World Television title meant the most because it was my first one. And I dedicated it to my mother. And it was just an exciting moment in my life. And Steve Regal was the one I won it from, Lord Steven Regal. And he was just such a great, another one like Arn Anderson that was on the road with me, always wanting to do business and teaching me and helping me, and then having such great matches with the guy. And I like guys that were a little physical too, like not real light. Like there were some guys you'd work with and they're so good that you didn't even know they hit you. You know what I mean? Like Eddie Guerrero was probably he's the easiest guy. Like he's like, that guy can make a broomstick look good. You know what I mean? So he didn't need me. He just happened to wrestle me and make me look phenomenal, But there was just some guys that were just so light. And one more quick story for you was when I was younger, I remember watching Ric Flair wrestle on television, the Nature Boy. And here I am now, fast forward, all those years later, I'm wrestling Ric Flair in Germany for the European Cup. Now, when I was a kid, he would do this thing, and he still does. He puts his hands out, and you go to grab his hands, and he does woo, and the crowd all does it back, And so here I am wrestling Rick, and he doesn't even talk about the match. He will not. You do not discuss the match with Rick. Everything's in the ring, okay? And now I'm a nervous wreck because I don't know everything's happening. I don't know where I go. What do I do? And that's when I first started, right? So Rick goes, relax, just listen to me, kid. So we go out there, and he puts his hands out for me to grab him. And not even thinking, I thought he wants to like a test of strength or something, I go grab his hands, and he does the woo. And I get the deja vu to me as a kid sitting in front of the television watching Ric Flair. It was like an out-of-body moment in my life. I'll never forget, watching him do it to me when I saw him do it to other people, But he did make me look so good. Like I knew the finish was his figure 4 leg lock. So we go into figure 4 leg lock, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to struggle for a little while, then I'm going to tap, and the referee will call the match. And he's saying, don't tap. And so I'm struggling, and he says, reverse it. I'm thinking, how the hell you reverse it? So basically, Ric Flair reversed it himself. I made it look like I did it. And next thing you know, I got Ric Flair in his figure 4 leg lock, and he's flaring and crazy. The referee's like, are you quitting? Are you quitting? Are you quitting? He's like, no. And he somehow got to the rope where they had to break it. And then eventually he got me back in it and won the match. But what a all about business, you know? I mean, if you really look at Ric Flair, he's probably lost more matches than he won or achieved on any ones that he won. But that's what made him so amazing. He was about business.
Yeah, kind of coaching you up there in the match as you're the young guy in there with him. That's a great story right there. I know you mentioned Diamond Dallas Page. He's doing some yoga now. You doing some stuff with him with yoga as well?
Oh my gosh, we are the 2 most competitive friends ever. You know, he lives 20 minutes down the road from me. You know, and we've always been very close, Dallas and I. And in fact, he started doing this push-up challenge with me, where they were the 30-second push-ups. You know. Where you do 10 seconds up, you hold it for 10 seconds, and 10 seconds down, you hold it for 10 seconds. And it was very difficult. You only get about maybe 8 or 9 of them, maybe, you know what I mean? To do them like that, because it's really a struggle. Well, Dallas and I would have these competitions where we would do right side by side, right? And, you know, it was like he would constantly beat me. And I thought, that son of a gun. I went and bought the little handles, you know, and I was doing it at my house over and over. And then he goes, hey, do you want to come over and do some workouts? I go, sure. I go, we're going to do the push-up challenge. He goes, you bet we are. I killed him, man. I think I did 12 or 13. He's like, damn. He was so pissed off when he found out that I'd been training for this. Like, because I couldn't get him on my mind. He beat me so badly, you know, I couldn't beat him. And finally, I smoked him, you know, and then that son of a gun goes on to another level with it because he just couldn't take it. But it was like that when we wrestled. How many sit-ups we could do, how many pull-ups we could do. We were always in competition with each other in a fun way, not a demeaning way at all, you know. But had so much fun with him, and obviously so great to see what he's doing. We both found our calling after wrestling. We love helping each other, helping people, and not too long ago, it was a few of our friends got together over at Dallas's house. Remember Rudy Ruttinger from the movie Rudy?
Mm-hmm.
He was there, and Ted DiBiase, and me and Dallas. And then you get 4 guys that are so inspirational in the same room. It's like we're out inspiring each other. You know, it's like one guy had a story and one guy would top that story. Of all the people we love helping in life, you know, and Ted, you know, Ted's doing a lot of preaching now. He goes to churches and really inspires a lot of people and does a great job. Of course, Rudy, his whole life has been that inspirational a person that he is, and Dell's saving and changing lives through DDPY yoga.
Well, again, not everybody comes through wrestling and has the impact that you're having now, kind of in your second life after it as well, doing some great work. And the book, again, Bad to Good, it's out now. How can people get that if they want to go get that? As you said, it's been out for a couple of weeks so far.
You know, it's a bestseller on Amazon already. Just go to Amazon.com. It's the fastest way. And real funny story, Mike, is that when the book first came out, my publishers are in England. Okay, because Ben Deal is my writer, award-winning writer. Okay, so when the book came out, I didn't even have a copy of it. I didn't have the book, so I had to buy my first copy through Amazon, and they sent it overnight to me. So that's how I got my copy.
First copy you purchased, so there you go. You're helping out your own cause.
Too.
Well, Mark, what a great story. It's been a thrill to have you on here today. And again, doing some great work out there. Continued success to you, what you're doing in the schools, and continued success with this book as well. It seems like it's certainly making a difference with people as well. I guess it's all you can ask for if you're really making a difference in people's lives. And it sounds like you certainly are doing that.
Oh, thank you. And let me just leave everybody with this. Life is short. Live it. Love is rare. Grab it. Anger is bad. Dump it. Fear is awful. Face it. Memories are sweet. Cherish it.
Well, great stuff. Great message there from Marc Mero. You could tell he's a great motivational speaker doing great work in his community and around the world as well. We thank him for joining us here today. And also, we invite you to check out his book, Bad to Good, in stores now, not just pro wrestling, but his life away from the ring as well. Our thanks to him again for his time. And we thank you for watching and listening, and invite you to like, to share, and certainly to subscribe to our channels. We continue to bring you some great guests, great motivational guests as well, great stories here along the way. For J.R. Quitman, our creator, producer, and director behind the scenes, I'm Mike Vaccaro. We'll see you next time, another episode of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.